Okay, ladies and gentlemen, now we need to talk a little bit about assumptions. As we begin to build our geometric system, we really need to be careful what we do know and what we don't know. In fact, that becomes very, very important as we move forward, what we do and what we do not know. Now, a couple things. We've already talked about that we can't assume length, just like when we discussed how big something is basically relative to its position, and unless it's labeled, you have no idea. But let's take a look at our little picture here. We got GHJKLM. What we can assume, what we do know, is that all points shown are coplanar because according to the system, the plane is two-dimensional. If everything is two-dimensional, they all sit on the same piece of paper as you see them here. That can be assumed. GH and J are collinear. So we can assume that this is a straight line, just like we assumed straight lines when I drew them last time. So all lines are straight, all planes are two-dimensional. HM, HL, HK, GJ intersect at point H. According to the picture, they do indeed touch. We can see that they touch, so the point of intersection is indeed right there at H. We can assume they all touch. It's not as if this line is somehow crossing over this line and you just don't see that there's space between them. No, they are indeed touching. Okay. H is between J. We talked about that. That's betweenness. Given any 2 points, there's a point between at least one. We have L is in the interior. L is interior to MHK. MHK. Interior means it's inside it. So it's inside, not outside. Okay. We can also say that GMH and MHL are adjacent. GHM, ML. Okay, so these two are adjacent because they share the same side. You can also tell that because in their lettering, they share the same lettering, so they are indeed adjacent. Doesn't mean they're complementary, doesn't mean they're supplementary, but it means they are next to each other. We can assume that JHK and KHG are supplementary. Why can we assume that these two are indeed supplementary? Well, because if this was a straight line and these are adjacent, then that makes them therefore a linear pair, making them add up to 180 degrees, which therefore makes them supplementary. And I just did a geometric proof, and you're going to get to do some soon. All right. Now, what we cannot assume is we cannot assume HM and HL are perpendicular. We do not know that these are perpendicular. Well, they don't even look perpendicular. Well, they may look perpendicular. If I draw these right here, A, B, C, D, they may look totally perpendicular. But unless I tell you they are indeed perpendicular, they are not. In fact, what I could do is I could say, nope, that's 100 degrees and that's 80 degrees. And if that's how they're given as labeled, then that's what they are, regardless of what they look like. I could even label the following. I could say this is 120 degrees and this is 60 degrees. If those are the given labels, then that is the truth, and you cannot assume otherwise, regardless of how they look. Okay, so we have that. We also cannot assume that JHK and GHM are congruent. We do not know these are congruent angles. This and this are not necessarily the same size. Why? Because they're not vertical angles. If I were to stretch this line through here, I could assume this angle and this angle because they would be vertical angles. But this and this are not vertical, meaning we can assume nothing. We also can't assume that just because this angle and this angle look about the same, that is indeed bisected. Now, by the way, bisected, to bisect something. Bi meaning two, sect meaning section or separate. So I did not necessarily separate this into two equal parts, unless, of course, they tell me that it's bisected, in which case, if it's bisected, they are indeed equal. We also cannot say that the length from here to here, or here to here, or here to here, or here to here, or here to here, are any of the same. We have no idea the length from point to point unless they label like 6 centimeters, 6 centimeters, 6 centimeters. We don't know. Again, this goes back to our idea of the little stick figures. This guy and this guy might actually be the very same guy, simply moved backwards, and they may indeed be the same size. They also may be something entirely different, and it might be something like a child. So, with that in mind, these are some of the things you can assume, some of the things you can't assume. You need to be careful when you assume because you could be creating bad geometry.